About 40 kilometres southwest of Ipswich, the residents of Rosevale seldom generate a noise complaint. There are days and nights when things do happen in Rosevale, but today is not one of them. The Rosevale Retreat Hotel, for example, is the oldest licensed premises in Queensland, but it's closed for renovations. Originally a homestead, it was turned into a licensed pub in 1887. It's not a fancy pub, but it has charm. Rosevale owes its name to the Rossvale pastoral run taken up by William Ross in the 1850s. Mustering cattle is thirsty work, which explains the pub, I suppose. My family has a strong connection to Rosevale. In the late 1800s, Prussian immigrant Albert Hohenhaus and his Australian-born wife Louisa Meyer ran a small, mixed farming operation a few kilometres up the road. In the early years, not long after the land was cleared, many of the farms ran dairy cattle. For a few decades, returns from milk and cream were more reliable than beef cattle, grains or vegetables. With about 50 farmers in the region by 1896, a group of them felt confident enough about the future of dairy to persuade the Queensland government to chip in for a cheese factory at Rosevale Plains. By 1915, however, the factory was struggling on account of a drought and eventually closed for good in 1928. Although farming continued into the early post-World War II years, thin soils and unreliable rains left hardly enough to butter bread during downturns. Many of the early settlers in this area were Germans or Scandinavians who had arrived via Brisbane, hungry to make a future for themselves and their families. These Lutherans were a particularly recalcitrant bunch, however. They liked to hire and fire pastors without consulting church authorities in Brisbane. This did not bode well. Another factor which helped to divide the early congregation was that the Scandinavians, we're told, preferred services in English, while the Germans wanted to retain their own language, which remained the lingua franca of the Rosevale Lutheran Church until at least 1936. The local community had its share of Catholics too. They built their own church just up the road from the pub. But on this trip, I want to introduce you to what remains of Rosevale's first Lutheran church. To get there, we take a small detour off the main road. In October 1881, local farmers banded together and founded what they called the St. Laurentius Lutheran Church. Unfortunately, nothing remains of the original building today. It burned to the ground when a grass fire got out of hand in September 1928. Sadly, the church records from before 1900 were destroyed in the fire. The Rosevale Church was well appointed for its time, complete with black satin paraments and gold tassels on the altar and pulpit. If that wasn't luxurious enough, the stairway to the choir balcony was carpeted with worship services supported by a brass band, no less. The original Rosevale Lutheran Church might have looked something like its sister church in Teviotville, some 25 kilometres distant. Truth is, we don't know for sure, as no definitive image of the Rosevale Church survives, or does it? Only recently a single blurry image attributed to the early Rosevale Lutheran Church has emerged. If this image was taken before 1928, it might be the only surviving photo of the Rosevale St. Laurentius Church. All that remains now at Rosevale are these headstones, part of a cemetery beside the original church, a very European tradition. Another reason I find this cemetery of interest, not just because it was the church here and the relatives on the Meyer side are buried here, but my father's grandfather, my great-grandfather, Albert August, got married here in 1886. If you're looking to explore Rosevale, be sure to seek out one of the most picturesque church sites in the scenic rim and say hello to the relatives for me.